Hello. Okay. First of all, I'm just going to start by showing what I got from Kokabiel, because I'm going to work on his model. Um, he, he mostly wanted me to texture the skirt, but I'm going to do more things, just to show people how I set up a bunch of stuff and how I will do, for example, textured shorts. And also, when he gave me his model, he had cleaned these parts, but I kind of restored that to show how I would how how to basically reuse some parts from Mona's OG skin, and how I would like basically transition between that and the parts from my base that he joined. Let me just kind of show what I mean, because he merged parts of Mona with the shoulders from my base, pretty much. Not with this texture, with another texture, obviously. Like his model is using this image, but I noticed that he didn't really need all of this part, so I decided to reduce the size, and I'm going to work with this instead. So I made basically a separate blend, and I'm going to show how did I set up everything and how to... Okay, let me see, someone else. Okay, hello. Okay. I don't know if I should really explain everything again. I hope not. Basically, I'm just working on Kokabiel's model. I just changed some things on his texture, and I'm going to show how do I set up stuff. Okay, so first of all, we need to create a material, obviously. I'm going to show it to call it material body. Some people in this part they do a more complicated setup. Some people like to work with EDS files. Some people like to use the shading tab to basically get that anime look. But I use different. I basically use a different setup. I use the bare minimum here. Let me just. It's this one. I'm going to first of all fix the UVs because Kokabiel, like I showed before, some people missed it. Kokabiel had this whole texture, but I decided to reduce it to this. So I'm going to adjust UVs. And this is actually a good thing to do because I can show people how to adjust UVs mathematically. Because I noticed that not everyone does that. Some people adjust UVs by with the in this option,
Oh my
the
god, I
default
forgot
option.
to join.
Hello.
Hi!
Hi. Okay. I don't know how much do I have to to explain again, but I'm just fixing
No, don't worry,
some.
just
Okay.
keep going.
Okay. Basically, I'm just like changing some things on Kokabiel's model because I changed the size of the texture.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just set materials and then I will fix UVs. And I was telling people that they should always remap things with this option instead of the default option because this allows them
Mm-hmm.
to fix things mathematically. Oops, no, the other way around. Wait, I'm being dumb. Okay, now it's done. Basically, I just scaled on the y-axis and moved it, and same for the other parts. For
Mm-hmm.
the skirt is going to be a different story, but I'm going to show that later. Because for the skirt, I did something different. To move these things, I'm just using the keys, the S and the. Actually, these are supposed to. Okay, supposedly I have this thing in corner, but it's not showing up when I. I wanted it to still show that when I'm here. Okay, I don't know why, but I'm using the general shortcuts, the DS to scale and grab to move. So now I'm going to do grab. And what am I missing? I'm just missing this part. Okay. Um, okay, the skirt. He had the texture on this part, but I'm going to trash that because I want to basically make my own video, and I'm actually going to, yeah, yeah. Um, First of all, the skirt doesn't really need to be mapped fully because at least I think it's better to just keep it symmetrical. So I'm going to cut it in half. So I'm going to do this. To select both sides, don't forget to toggle this thing, the X-ray, and then you can select one off, delete, then you just, wait, does it have two skirts? Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. Let me. How many skirts does it have?
I have not touched that.
Okay. Okay. Now it's gone. Okay, and then we just have to mirror, and also there's some clipping there, but I'll fix it later. The clipping is not with the body.
Clipping on Final Mesh.
No, it's probably because I added the legs part. I added, or maybe not. It's actually in skirts. Oh no, it's partly because I didn't cut.
Oh.
Okay, this is the problem. Okay, that's probably the reason. It's still This is weird. It's not supposed to to break like this. I'm trying to figure out the problem. Okay, I can. Okay, let's just do textures and then we can figure out the mesh. That's another problem. Also, like I was saying before, on one hand, I don't use any DDS plugin, and I also don't like to use the Photoshop format here. I prefer to use PNG because sometimes I like to export the picture to work on my phone on smaller details. And the app that I use there, Ibis Paint, only works with PNG. And also some people don't know how to obtain the anim style, and that's actually super simple. You just have to click here in viewport shading, then shadeless. Also, you have to toggle this off, and yeah, that's it. You just have to click shadeless and make sure that it's showing texture. And you can do the same thing on these tabs in the texture in the texture paint, in the UV tab. And yeah, okay. I think this is enough for us to start painting. I'm going to first show how would I like how to transition between the parts of the skin from Mona to the parts from my shoulders. Also, this has a lot of clipping. Actually, I could okay, I'm going to fix it in a different way. I'm going to use this, then separate. Okay. I don't know what happened, but there is like a lot of duplication here.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Yeah, no, you don't have that in your version?
No.
Interesting, I don't know. I don't think I didn't duplicate them much, but but it's actually weird. Also, this is another UV. Because I'm working in a different file now. Let me. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to delete this. Okay, no more duplication. This is good enough. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try to keep these things on her back. Maybe also all of this area, and then I'm going to try to fix top. You can see that this is her skin color, so I'm going to color pick from here. To color pick, you use F. You just have to hit F. If like some people, at least I in beginning, when I tried to color pick things, I used to click F by pressing down and then maybe dragging the mouse, and that sometimes didn't work. So it's really just hitting the short key. To resize it's also F. You just have to do this. Also, in terms of brush settings, usually smooth is enough, and the stroke method you probably will always want either space or lines. Line is more to do some fine details and to create specific forms, but overall you will probably want space to be able to move it freely. Also, there was another thing that I wanted to say, and that is that sometimes people are trying to paint here, but they don't see anything happening. There can be several reasons for that. One of them is the face orientation, because you mostly or you can only paint on blue faces. If you try to paint in a red face, that wouldn't work very well. I can even show. I can, for example, invert. If they were red and I try to paint this, nothing is happening. So if people are trying to paint that they don't see anything happening, that can be the reason. Now let me just, okay. And other reasons can be just the strength of the brush. It obviously can't be 0, and I think that's pretty much it. And usually people will want to have this in mix. People can use other effects obviously, but I think this is the best one, and it's the default. Also, Blender doesn't have layers. I know that some people, like Unplan in his tutorial, show the way to create layers, but I personally don't do that. I just paint everything in a single layer here in Blender. I think that's good enough, to be honest. You can just try to smooth this. Maybe when I notice that there is some transition, I usually color pick that, kind of reduce the opacity of the brush, and basically just try to get there. Oops. Okay, here we don't need to have it as dark. Let me just... I'm basically just trying to create a decent transition between the different areas. This is not the most complicated part. And for the neck, since we don't have anything on her back like the original skin for Mona had, we don't really want this shadow anymore, so I'm going to also paint it. You could maybe like leave a cast shadow for the necklace if you wanted, something like this. So interesting. Something here is not right. But I'm not going to figure out the problem now. Whatever. Okay. And now, obviously, we have to fix this part. I would probably just try to continue the shape that she has here. Let me... I basically start with the darker shape, Then let me also kind of do this. This doesn't really make sense. Let me just... One thing that I like to do is to use the smear tool to kind of try to guide the line in a way that transitions somewhat naturally, but not like this, so it didn't turn out very well. That is light. Okay, I'm going to try this instead. Hello. I don't know who got here, but congratulations on seeing me paint boobs. um, Let me see. Okay, and then I will probably also kind of try to mimic the shape of her collarbones. Something like this. I'm not going to be a super perfectionist in this tutorial because I want to move on to other things as well. But you just get an idea on how you could define shapes. Okay, and this kinda is enough for the skin. Okay, also let me remove this. After that, I wanted to move on to the skirt, and then depending on how much time we have, I can also do the shorts. So I'm going to do that. For the skirt, I already showed that I cut it in half, and I'm also going to scale it. By the way, this has nothing to do with textures, but we can always do 3s to quads. It's always nice to have that in the body parts, and usually with these options. I think this should be big enough, but I'm probably going to start making patterns and such, so I guess since we don't have much more to add, a big size is not a problem. I'm going to start by filling it with a single color, possibly the color of this part. Let me see. Okay, this is a good enough start. So I just use the bucket to fill. By the way, as I work, I like to keep saving the image. You just have to like hover the mouse on this side and then use Alt S. So there's that. I don't know what kind of pattern does Kokabiel want, by the way.
Basically what I have. Well,
You had a bunch of stars, yes, but I think I'm going to do a bit more than that. I think I'm going to try to prolong the lines, the golden parts here, and maybe do some complicated pattern like the things that Genshin tends to have. Okay.
zero mode now.
Okay. Let me see. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Oh, wait. Also, I think I'm going to fuse these. Oh, wait. It doesn't have UVs. Text card. Oh, text. No, it has. And this. Text card, text card. What is going on? I have no idea. They both have text card. Oh wait, this one doesn't have. Okay, that's it. That's the problem. I'm just super blind. Okay, now it works. Okay. see. Let me first draft an idea. Obviously, these lines are super bad. I'm just trying to figure out what I want. Okay, I think this is an idea, and this will go here. I think I messed up something. I'm just trying to think about a kind of pattern that Genshin would probably give us. Okay, I could see this, I think. Okay, now that I have like an idea of what I want, I'm just going to use line to keep smoothing the shapes. By the way, if anyone has questions, you can ask. I don't mind if you interrupt or something.
I don't know if it's just me, but this is so interesting.
What? What part?
Everything, like the texturing is so interesting. The way you think.
Really? Okay. That's good to know, I think.
So can you now fill it with the like
With
the
the bucket?
tool?
No, the lines I can sadly fill with that. No, I will have to actually paint them. The bucket tool is not smart enough. It just notices the UV area and fills that, but not the lines. No. And also, besides making the lines, I will also have to. I might not finish that during the stream. Like I might skip it to other parts, but you notice how Mona has these dark outlines around the golden parts. Yeah, basically I'm going to try to do that. Yeah, as well. At least I'm going to start it, but then I'll probably skip to other parts.
I'm mostly having problems with the jagged stuff.
Yeah, the jagged stuff sometimes happens a lot because the size is too small. Each square can, yeah, exactly. You can, to an extent, smudge a bit to soften it, and like from afar, you are not going to see like a super big problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you zoom in a lot, obviously, yeah, exactly. And also, like the bigger is the on one hand the texture, each of the individual squares can be. And actually, let me check the size just to make sure that I'm not working on something too small. I didn't check before.
And just load it in Photoshop and edit it there.
Yeah, okay, exactly. This is the size that it's using. It's quite correct. And also the UV parts, they should be more or less proportional to not this, to the proportions of the parts. Like if you have a small accessory like a diamond, this thing, obviously you don't want UV to
Yeah,
be
the
much
other one
bigger than skirt.
shouldn't
Exactly.
take that
Exactly.
big place.
Mm-hmm.
Usually.
Yeah. I'm going to.
I usually check the resolution by choosing image and resize.
Yeah,
It
that
shows
usually
the
works.
image
Yes.
resolution.
By the way, I don't have the mirror clicked here because the UVs are already mirrored, but if you had the two sides mapped to different parts, everything you wanted to mirror, you would obviously need to click here to see the results of the painting on two sides. I don't like how this is super shaken. Clear. Bah.
I was trying to draw textures with the stabilizing thing.
I actually have no idea what you're talking about. What is the stabilizing thing?
In the brush settings,
Uh,
you go
in this
to the
part?
stroke,
Okay.
and while the space is active, there's a stabilize checkbox, stabilize stroke.
In the stroke, okay. Then
You don't have it?
apparently not. I'm not I'm doing this with mouse. I don't know if that's the issue. Also, what is
On
going
mine,
on
it's
with
above the fall off, but
it?
you don't have it.
I have the fall off. I have that, yes. I don't know if that's what you mean. What is going on with this?
Is this 3.4? No, on mine.
3.6.
3.6. Mine is older and I have it.
Okay, this has some problems. This the mesh here. I don't want to fix it, but I'm going to kind of shit this with. Where does it start? It starts. Okay. Let me just. Then I need this. I'm just going to. Okay, now let me see what
I use auto mirror.
Yeah, I'm going to use. I'm going just to use mirror, but this cat has some problems anyway. But I wanted to. Wait, for some reason here it looks fixed. Okay. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It has some issues here. Wait. Mono leg.
It's probably inverted normal or something. Oh, the leg protruding.
Okay, yeah, it was leg protruding, and besides leg protruding, it has this face that is not connected. Or rather, it is. Okay. I'm going to. You see the. Agora não, mãe. It's my mom. Okay, I'm going to kind of fake that by just doing this. Ideally, we don't have too many triangles or whatever. Yeah. And this is going to be good enough.
Might mess up a bit the UV.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to mess up too much of UV. It's just going, because I didn't add any face, I just cut it in half. Now this, it's not too pretty. It's going to stretch things in a way I didn't want. But this is going to be good enough for the lesson. a little. Okay, this is good enough, I think. Okay, let me just go back to painting. To be honest, for now, you are probably all getting bored of seeing me do this. Since it's always the same thing for now. I like to kind of vary on the thickness of this golden part. I think it's going to look more interesting if, for example, here in this curve, if we make it wider, while the tip obviously gets thinner. Not like this, but I'm going to fix it. Hello. Okay, something like this. Also, I don't like these lines, but I'm not going to worry about that now. I still haven't worked on the back, but it's fine. I'm getting messages from people, and I can't check right now. Oh well. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to care too much about details for now. I also need to finish this on the back. And also, since this part of the back still has this color, what I'm going to do is probably preserve the color all around. Okay, this would be a good start. Also, Kokabiel had a bunch of stars in the beginning. I'm going to maybe add some too, but also let me just continue this.
Yeah.
Let me just at least pretend that the pattern is being continued. Oh wait, oh no, I thought this was completely symmetrical, but Mono only has, well, too bad, I think I'm going to invert Mono's body too. um, now she will have stars on both sides, I don't care. If we really wanted the two sides to be different, we could um, we could map the skirt to these two different parts, so one here and one here on top, and that way they could be different, but I'm not going to do that now. um, so Mona is simply going to get a cut. Sorry, Mona.
Couldn't you just select that mesh and in the UV just fold it over to the...
I could, to be honest, I could. I mean, I could maybe, because Mona, I don't know if she has this
Is it-
symmetrical. I don't.
Is it the same? Is it the
No,
same
I
mesh?
don't know if it maps completely in the same way. To be honest,
No, it's not symmetrical, I think.
yeah, doesn't seem to be.
Mona is
Um,
probably symmetrical character.
exactly. And the problem is that UVs are not as well. In my base, I always take care to make it symmetrical.
If they're
Mm.
not perfectly symmetrical, but the model is, and if your weights are mirrored, you could just
Yeah.
grab half of it and then mirror the model instead, if you wanted.
Yeah, I'm going to
Mhm.
exactly. I'm going to mirror the model. Is exactly what I'm going to do. But I'm struggling to figure out how this part is done.
Ooh.
Oh, I just left the star in there.
Okay,
Doesn't show up
okay,
there.
okay. Let me delete this and let me see what this is.
Let's see.
Oh, you left side inside. Okay, I see now. Oh, interesting. But well, we don't need this.
I just didn't care. It
Okay.
didn't show up on the model.
Sure,
and then
but
when I realized,
well,
ah,
I'm going to
cool.
delete it
It's a
because
mismatch
it was
for,
actually confusing me. Okay, okay. Okay, I'm going to just mirror
Easter
this
egg,
in that way. Yeah. So mirror, and I'm going to apply. Why not? And that way I'm even going to shine this already. That way you don't see the weird lines. Okay. Wait. Oh, was I too dumb or what? Didn't I mirror this? Oh no, I did, but I didn't mirror this. Okay.
Yeah, you separated everything again, right? From the model there originally. Yeah.
Let me just confirm again. Okay, yes. I actually hadn't noticed that it was separate. Okay, now she's going to have stars on both sides. Good, okay. Let me just... Okay, looks more or less seamless. More or less, not really. It has some breaks and that is going to create some issues here. Let me remove this and this. No, okay, it still has some issues, but let me see if this is enough. Okay, it was cool. It was good enough. Also, I'm noticing. I don't love this reveal, but it's fine. Okay, and like this, it's going to be easier to paint and to transition properly because now everything is aligned. And like I said before, I will not subject, but I will probably start adding these lines all around, but that's going to take some time. So I might not show everything of that in this lesson, just to be able to show other parts as well. So pretend that I was doing this and also trying to smooth the transitions. Also, sometimes I go over the textures in Genshin and try to fix some of the worst parts that are too blurry. Or you can also try to do the other way around and do this to make it blend better with the way the Genshin texture looks. Just to add some blurriness, right? And you will do that to all of these parts. And to all of these, but that will take a long time, so I'm not going to do that now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some stars, and I'm going to teach people how to kind of give this effect, because I know some people struggle with that. First I'm just going to figure out the placing of the stars that I want. I think I'm going to do one here, one here, one here. I could maybe like make it floral. I could do something like this, but actually this is going to take a long time. Let me just... Okay, pretend that these are all stars, because I'm not going to waste too much time with that during the lesson. And I'm just instead going to texture this one. The way this one is done is not necessarily the way I tend to do it. But basically, on Mona, they are textured by essentially shading the faces that are lower in a darker color, like this. They also they have like a gradient that makes the center darker than the rest. So something like this. Why is it too... Okay, UVs here are probably a bit messy, so I'm not being able to give it straight lines as I wanted, but you get the idea of the process. And you can always blur it a bit to...
Oh, so it's dark underneath, and you draw the lighter parts.
On the way on Mona, yes, because Mona kinda has that effect. Also, I think I darkened it too much. I think the border should be a bit lighter.
The mono ones are like too rough.
Let me just try to lighten this, and then I'm going to fix the outside. But I'm going to show another way how I tend to do it, because it's a bit different.
You're trying to soften the edges.
Yeah, I just softened it a bit and also lightened them, because I think the gradient here is a bit more noticeable than what I was doing. Also
This one has a hard contour.
Yeah, possible. Like, people can also go to the fall off to kind of smooth things, and you can obviously play with the brush to see. For example, if I add the constant, it's super hard. The edges are super hard, but I never use this, to be honest. And also I'm going to just darken the borders a little. and also it's always possible to paint like a cast shadow. You just have to like pick the color of the base, darken it a bit. By darken, I don't mean going down, I mean going here, and also you can change the a bit just to make it look a bit better. And then like oh my god, I forgot to remove this. Smooth. This is like good enough, and then you can just smooth it a bit. Something like this. You can more or less see a certain impression of volume, even from a distance. And if I was doing this, if I was shading the diamond in the way I tend to do it, it's more like... First let me draw one. Like this, I didn't select color. Okay. I'm going to make it diagonally, I guess. Okay, the way I do it is usually by selecting a lighter color, almost white. Then basically imagine this divided in 4 parts. I'm going to make one lighter. If you have like other metallic parts, maybe try to keep the lighter side the same that as you use for other parts that are close to this. And then a dark color to go here, basically on the opposite face. Also, I guess so like this, and then I'm just going to use to also make a gradient here. I think I already did it here. And you could also lighten the border a bit, I guess. You can be as picky as you want, right? But let me just try to finish it. And then you will do the same thing that I did for that one, the outline and the cast shadow. But I'm going to stop here because I'm taking too long with that. Other things that always tend to look good on Genshin are things like gradients. For example, you could make the skirt have a gradient to a darker part here, or even maybe to a blue. Let's try actually blue. Why not? Yeah, it's a bit... The transition could be better, of course, but you get the idea. Genshin tends to do this kind of thing a lot. It doesn't even have to be like an actual line, it could be... you can still soften the transition. And
Ari,
other... What?
why don't you use the gradient? Why don't you use the gradient tool?
I can use a gradient tool, but sometimes I prefer to have more control, I guess. Where exactly do
That's
I want
fair.
to? And also, like I was saying, I was just using this to like pick. For example, sometimes I want the front to have a lighter area to like kind of give the impression of form. It's hard to explain, but yeah.
I mean, of course. I just...
No, but yes, obviously,
It's
I guess,
just
yeah, no, that's true, that's a fair point. Yeah, a gradient would be the best way for most people to do gradients, for sure. And also why I was going to also suggest that people paint fake outlines even in the skirt itself, because sometimes in the game the outlines don't show properly. And also Genshin tends to paint outlines for almost everything, even if they are super light. Like here in the cloak, you can see outlines, you can see at least in extremities, you always see outlines. So I'm just going to pick line and start. I'm painting something here. For this I prefer to guide myself by the UV. It's just easier to follow. Oops, too much. And yeah. Okay, I think for the skirt, this is enough to demonstrate. Like I said, this is not finished, so I would need to make the outlines at least. And if, for example, you wanted to give the impression that that these parts also add volume, you could use a similar trick that you used for the gem, by basically painting shadow on the bottom side, pretty much. Here it starts to turn sideways, so you can start reducing the shadow. And here the bottom part is on this side, so you could do something like this. Obviously, try to make it gradually thinner. And same logic here. You will do something like this on this side as well, and obviously around all of the gold part. Then you would have your outline, and then you could also like paint a cast shadow to again give the idea of volume. Right, you would do something like this. Actually, this is way too dark. But let's pretend that I finished this. Even just from a distance, you can more or less get that impression already, even though I haven't finished. And you can also paint some outlines, mostly in areas that are on the top. So you could paint it in, for example, this part, and you could go here as well, right? You could spend a lot of time in this. I sometimes do. But yeah, you get the idea. Okay, I think it's enough for the skirt for now. So I'm going to like show some ways of painting shorts. Since this is my base body, one trick that people can use, even people that don't know how to paint very well, is to, I'm going to duplicate, is to actually just select the shape for the shorts in Photoshop, then copy that to another layer, and then maybe use the gradient map tool or some filter to transform it. For example, let's say you wanted the shorts to be more or less this height. You will probably have to fix some things in Blender later, but this is a starting point. So let's say you cut that. Then you could, for example, use gradient tool to, I don't like this color for sure. Let me, I don't know, can be like a dark purple or something. Okay, something. Then you could wait, give me a second, let me just remove this. Okay, you can see that this is a way to reuse shadows that I painted in my base, for this part and for that part. You can even make the shadows darker if you want. Either way, this could be a starting point. Then you have to re-import the picture. It's this one. And it is. And yeah, you kinda got shorts, obviously, because I was just guessing. You kinda have to fix this. I'm seeing some issues with UV, but it's fine, I'm just picking up. And yeah, you kinda got, obviously, this is still full of problems, but you technically got some shots without having to paint much manually. And you don't want this part to be visible. Okay, something like this. And you could also like refine it by either adding patterns like Genshin characters always have, or you could try to give the impression of volume by doing what I did before with the skirt, by kind of making a cast shadow. You know, this kind of thing. So you could go all around and do that. Who keeps entering and leaving? Actually, this is... Okay. And I did this with shorts, but obviously people can do this, can use the same trick with, for example, making inner shirts or something like that. Something that doesn't really require a lot of volume. You can just go to my base and cut some part, darken it, or give it color you want. And yeah, you got a decent base. And also you could go here and maybe I'll add a darker outline. Just to, you know, you get the idea. Like exactly like I did for the golden parts. And you could also add outline here. It's not going to be visible, but if it was, you could do it. I'm not going to finish that because the skirt is going to cover it. But yeah, you got some shorts. Let me see. Obviously none of this is finished, and also this one I have some problems. I think it's just because I think I found the problem, Coca. I think I just shouldn't have toggled all of these. It says here, yeah, that's probably the problem. Yeah,
final body.
yeah, exactly. I probably just toggled the whole collection. Yeah, okay. Also, the skirt is not connected, but I can do that later. It's not part of the lesson. I was going to consider showing another way of doing shorts. I don't know if it's going to be interesting or not, but basically I was just going to show how people can kind of cut the mesh, duplicate it, and then use that as a base for shirts, for shorts, for pants, for whatever. But to be honest, I think other models already show something similar. The most important part would be the painting, but I can kind of show that here as well. Let's say you wanted this to be more wrinkled, for example, right? Or let's say that you are not using my base body and the body that you are using doesn't really have any textures that support the idea of wrinkles in these parts. You like I know some people struggle with this, but you really just have to kind of add triangular lines. Then you kind of have to thin the tips, and then you can kind of just blur, or it's not too bad. I think it's passable. Not I obviously this is a bit too low for. And even if you don't like like what I was saying, the lines were not exactly what I wanted. You can just like kind of push them in with the smear, and it sometimes works. Even here, you could just let's say you wanted this to be a bit lower, right? You could go here. You could like start if you wanted some parts to be darker. You could just you could do this. Reducing the strength of the brush can help a lot to control how some areas look. Also here it's a bit maybe too much for shorts. They are meant to be a bit more baggy, I guess. But like, yeah, if you were shading pants, the process would be kind of similar. Obviously, it depends on how tight you want them to be, but it's something like that. You just have to have a V here, have the shape of the S. That's kind of it. And now, I don't know if I'm going to show people how to take care of diffuse file or not. Because I don't know how long. Okay, it's been more than 1 hour. Okay, then it's probably a good time to end the lesson, I think.